What's going on? This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, the founder of the highest paid part-time job in the world options training program. Go ahead and get this stream started. And what we're going to talk about really quickly is the power of naked options, right? And so this is going to be a really good video for a person that may be in the options market. They may not really understand the different types of options, or a person that is unfamiliar with the options market and want to kind of understand naked options. And I'm going to give you an understanding of why I teach naked options as a foundational piece to becoming an options trader. There's a specific reason for that. And I want you to kind of understand how naked options can benefit you on your journey to become a really, really successful trader. Because what I want you to understand is it's not about just trading options. Once you get into the market and you kind of understand how vast the market is, you can get into a lot of different areas, right? Not just in the equities market. You know, we don't talk about the bonds market. The bonds market is bigger than the stock market, right? It's way bigger. Then you can go into the futures market. You can go into cryptocurrency trading. You can go into real estate trading, just trade paper. So there's so many different things, but you got to really understand markets. You got to understand volatility. You got to understand leverage. You got to understand risk management. So a lot of these fundamental principles are going to be the same regardless of what market you go to. But there's a reason why I teach naked options, right? And I don't teach spreads, and I don't teach selling cover calls, and I don't teach selling cover puts. And I'm not saying that they're negative. I just don't do it. And one of the things that I'm against is that I'm against marketing what I do by saying that something else is negative. I want you to always understand the impact of what you're doing. But I don't feel like, well, I got to down talk selling cover calls or selling cover puts to try to get you to buy my course about selling and trading naked options. You know, once you understand that trading is a tool. And so the tools, if you have a toolbox, right, it's based on the scenario. So based on the scenario, what tools did I utilize? And then you got to understand that you may not have the tools to do everything. So there's a guy that can probably fix your car, right, based on his tool. He can do general car work, but he probably can't do your transmission because you don't have tools for that. Or there may be a guy that can do general car work, do your tune up, change your brakes, things of that nature, but he don't have the tools to do electrical work on your car. You got to go to an electrical person on that. So in the market, from an option standpoint, you got people that they make a lot of their money, right, what we call selling premium. You got other people, and I tell people all the time, the whales buy naked calls and puts. The whales buy naked calls and puts. That's what whales do. You also got volatility traders. You got people that just trade volatility utilizing a lot of spreads. So based on the scenario, different actors come into the market and they move and they shake around and they do what they got to do to get their money because the market is that vast and it provides that much opportunity where you don't necessarily have to get boxed in. Based on the scenario, you try to determine, do I have the skill set? Do I have the knowledge? Do I have the tools to be able to operate in this particular space successfully? And that's what I'm about teaching you to do. I want to give you more options, which is the whole concept of an option. So here's why I got into really naked, right? I knew the audience that I wanted to go after. So I sat back, I studied the market, I peeped the scenario, I understood what was going on, right? And what I saw was that a lot of the courses that was teaching about how to become options trader was one, either teaching BS, or if they were legitimate, they were teaching strategies that you needed a lot of capital to start off with. So a lot of the people that I saw were teaching strategies based on running these real complex stretch strategies. You needed like $7 grand or 15 grand to get a 20% return. The market that I wanted to go after didn't have 7 to 15 grand up front just to get into the market. They didn't have that. Just like, you know, back in the day, if you wanted to day trade, a lot of people would tell you needed $25,000 because you didn't want to hit the PDT rule. So they would tell you, well, you need 25 grand. So what that does, is it cuts a certain amount of people right out of the market from the gate because they don't have 25 grand. Just like a lot of people that trade options, they don't have 7,000 or 15,000 to try to get a 20% return on this really, really complex stretch strategy. They got an 80% probability. They don't have it. So I didn't want to go after that market because to me, if you got $17,000 or $20,000 in the bank, you probably already know something about the markets. You probably already been exposed to it, and you're just looking for a way to generate income on the money that you have sitting in the bank. What I wanted to go after was a market of people that had never been exposed to the markets. And the reason why is because around 10 years ago, I had a lot more money. I had a lot of money 10 years ago for a lot of different reasons. I was sitting on something real nice, but I knew nothing about the markets, right? I knew what a stock was, right? I knew what it was from an academic standpoint, but I didn't have people around me like the Wall Street trapper that could really lace me to the game. because that's, my people that I was running with, we knew how to get money, but that's all we knew how to do. I was never a big spender. I like to stack paper. I don't like to spend money. I like to stack it. I do not like to spend money. And I'm not a cheap person. I just don't get off spending money. I like to stack bread. That's just my personality. I got that from my mama. I like to stack it up. So I knew how to get money, but I didn't know what to do with it after that. So then when I decided I was going to change my life, I said, well, let me go into business. And what I did in business was I created businesses that just churned a lot of money. So you made a lot of money, but you spent a lot of money to make a lot of money. And so what I did was I spent a lot of money in business. And you're also going to spend a lot of money in business trying to figure out how to run a business, because I wasn't taught how to operate a business. So you make a lot of mistakes in business that cost you money. And what I realized when I finally learned about the markets is that if I just would have took some of my money and bought $30,000, $40,000 worth of this stock, or $30,000, $40,000 worth of that stock, I'd have been a millionaire right now based on the way those stocks appreciated over the last decade. That's why I tell people I buy Apple now, because I didn't know to buy Apple 10 years ago, and Apple was $30, $40 a share. And right before Apple split, Apple was around $400 a share. So because I wasn't exposed to this particular space, nobody in my family talked to me about it. I didn't know when you get a certain kind of money, you can go into the market with that money. I didn't know that. So I didn't do it. So I knew what audience I wanted to go after was an audience that had not really been exposed to the market. And I knew that many people in that audience weren't sitting on $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. So once I started to understand the market, and then I got into options trading, and I understood like what I had to do to be successful as a trader, and I started off buying relatively cheap naked contracts. So I started off buying like bank options, which are relatively cheap. So if you look at like Bank of America, their options are relatively inexpensive compared to like Tesla or Amazon, right? I stayed away from areas that were super volatile, which spikes up the options price. A lot of people are attracted to really volatile situations, but the problem is that that volatility spikes up the price of the option. So now the option becomes a lot more expensive. So I do naked calls because it allows the average person to come into the market and learn how to trade options. Learn about the options market, which is the secondary market. It's a derivative market. There's a lot of liquidity in the market kind of based on what contract, but there's not a really high barrier to entry based on the price point. And then once they learn the market in that particular space, they can now apply that to different scenarios. So now if you want to go into spreads or you want to go into a lot of these complex option strategies, you can go in there and become successful because you have a foundational piece that you're working off of. Many people struggle doing naked options. And they hear where, well, you should never do naked options. You should do spreads. And I'm here to tell you, if you can't make naked options work, you're going to struggle with spreads. Because if you can't make the basic work, why would you think you can make the complex work? But a lot of people don't understand that. They can't make the basic work, so they try to make it more complex. My question is, if you can't make the basic work, what makes you think you can make the complex work? So when I coach basketball, and I'm going to tell you this, and people say, well, no, you tripping. I'm being for real. I can teach you basic moves, and if you do the move I tell you to do, I don't care what league you play in, you can score 10 to 15 points a game. And some people may say, well, that's not a lot of points. There's a lot of people can't score 10 to 15 points a game. Just off these basic moves. I ain't talking about anything else. I'm not talking about the free throws. If you just do these basic moves, you can score 10 to 15 points a game in any league. I don't care, because the game of basketball is set up to work a certain kind of way. So as long as they get you the ball, you can do it. Because I'm going to show you how to beat the defense with a basic move. And most basketball players don't know how to beat the defense. They don't. They have no idea what that means. I'm going to teach you how to beat the defense with basic moves. You understand me? So because I understand, you got to know how to do the fundamentals first before you make it complex. A lot of people struggle with the fundamentals, and they think, well, I'm not doing something complex enough, or I need something more complex, or I need this more sophisticated strategy. The market is beating you over the head because of simplicity. You got simple things that's not allowing you to be successful. So once you become successful doing the simple stuff, then you can start doing these really, really complicated plays. But if I try to talk to you about options and you don't understand the basics, you're not going to understand where I'm going with you when I start talking about, well, we got to deal with the fact that there's volatility on these puts, right? So we look at AMC. AMC is doing what I call, it's not gamma squeezing, but it's what I call exploding upward. And so what you normally see with an option is that when it goes up, the volatility normally goes down. These particular meme stock plays are so volatile that as they go up, the put volatility also goes up. That's a problem. Because what I would normally look to do is know that this is a hype play, it's a momentum play. Let me play the downside of it. So as soon as it starts running, I would take a position for puts on the way down because I know once everybody leaves the play, it's going to sell off really rapidly. But because this play to me is, I forgot what the proper term is, but as it's going up, it's creating so much volatility, and the market makers believe it to be so volatile, it's not only spiking volatility on the calls, but it's spiking volatility on the puts, which means that if I buy the put, once it starts to consolidate, the volatility on the puts is going to start to go down, especially as we get closer to the expiration date, which is going to kill my premiums. So even if I get the movement that I want, I lose on the contract. If you don't understand the fundamentals of the market, you're just not going to understand what I just told you. And you'll run in there and you'll buy those put contracts, and then it'll consolidate, right? You'll have a week of consolidation. And what'll happen is you'll lose all your premium because what'll happen is the volatility will start to soften. So you got to understand the fundamentals of the market first before you get into these really complex scenarios, so you can look at the scenario and say, okay, you know what? Based on how this thing is set up, I don't need to do this, I don't need to do that. Maybe I just need to chill and kind of see how this plays out. While everybody else is running over there because they just see something and they think it's a good thing because they don't understand what are the fundamentals that are driving this up. So that's one of the reasons why I tell people you really got to understand volatility in the market, because that's one of the biggest Greeks that really determines the pricing of the contracts. And you have to determine how the market makers utilize volatility to price contracts and how that can hurt you. You understand me? So this is why I do naked, because it's a very, very fundamental way to understand the options market. And once you get those fundamentals down, you can build off of that and put yourself in a position to be successful doing a lot more complex things. So, but many people want to avoid the fundamentals to get to the money. That's a problem, but that's what people do in every scenario. I don't want to get fundamentally sound, I just want to make money. And so you ignore the fundamentals and try to make money. So you got people that get fed alerts. Nothing wrong with the alert game. I'm not down in it. It makes money, do your thing. But you getting fed alerts, but you never really understand how the market works. So the problem is, what if the alerts don't work no more? Now what? Or what if you and the alert person, y'all fall out and y'all don't talk no more? So now what y'all gonna do? So that's the issue, is that you need to kind of learn how to do it on your own, understanding the fundamentals to where you're not dependent on somebody else to feed you plays. I get plays from people all the time, but I don't need their plays because I know how to go get plays out of the market myself, because I understand the fundamentals, because I took the time to learn the fundamentals, which is naked calls, naked puts. You got to understand why a market for this particular derivative even exists. What's the appeal of the market? Once you understand what that appeal of the market is, you understand why buyers come into this particular market to buy these particular derivatives. And like I said, you can look at the SPY, right? So we talk about the SPY. The June 425 call for June 18th got 119,000 open interest. That's not retail buying that. So why does this market exist, right? A secondary derivative market exists where we can take that particular call. If you look that up, you can take the premium at the ask, multiply by the 119, it can tell you how much that particular contract is worth at that strike, how much money's in that contract. That represents millions of dollars. You got to understand why the market exists for that particular call. What does the market believe about the overall macroeconomic scenario to where they'll put money behind that call and take the risk that they're going to lose premium because they've taken that particular position in the market. And once you understand these things, then you can understand how to insert yourself in it and make you some money and put yourself in a position to be successful so you can live the life that you want to live. But one of the things I like about naked calls and naked puts is it allows people to come into the market at a very, very low cost compared to doing a lot of these other complex spreads. When you're doing spreads, you often have to either take on a margin or you have to have a position. So let's take, for example, GME. Let's say, not GME, we'll take GME. Let's say you wanted to do spreads on GME, or you wanted to sell premium on GME. Well, GME closed around 220. So you take 220 and you got to own 100 shares of GME. So you take 220 multiplied by 100. That's how many shares you got to have to sell one contract of GME. Or you could take margin, which means that you could take a loan against your hold of your account to allow yourself now to sell contracts. Or you could sell naked if you got enough margin, which means that you don't own the security, but you're going to sell it. There are people that destroyed their account selling naked calls for GME, and then it ran up to $400 and they got exercised. So GME was 60 or 120 or 80. They sold naked, right? Thinking that, man, ain't no way in the world GME is going to go to 200. It rolled up to 400, and then they got exercised at the 120 strike, right? Which means now you got to take 400 multiplied by 100 to buy the shares of GME, because each contract represents 100 shares of stock to satisfy your margin requirements, or it satisfy the fact that you got exercise on that contract. Why? Because you don't understand the basics. So that's why I'm a big fan of getting people to understand the basics, understanding the fundamentals. And one of the ways in which I do that is with naked calls. And once you learn that, you can go move around and wiggle and do what you got to do and shake how you want to shake, because you know how to get money in the environment, because you understand the fundamentals of the environment. So if you want to learn more about the highest paid part-time job in the world options training program, got the testimonials on the YouTube site. We got the $475, $495 course. That course is probably getting ready to go up. I got like 17 videos on there. That course started out with like 9 or 8 videos. I keep adding out. The only reason a person is not successful through that program is because they haven't dedicated their time and their attention to do it, right? Because that basic program has retired people off the basic. And it wasn't just the program. They did a lot of work on their own. But all we try to do is create an environment and give them a fundamental understanding, and then we just allow them to go do what they do. But people that come into the program that are very dedicated and have a goal to become successful, I can help them become successful. Everybody else, they do what they do. Some people get lost in the sauce. That's them. I follow up with most people, but I can't follow up with somebody indefinitely, because if you don't want it, I can't make you want it. Got the VIP program. It starts at $2K. That may sound a lot of money to you, but the question I want to ask you is that how much is your freedom worth? How much is your income autonomy worth to you? Is it worth $2,000? How much did you pay to college for an formalized education that isn't giving you the benefit that you thought you was going to get? And they charge way more than $2,000, right? So look at what you can get out of the situation if you apply yourself, as opposed to what the actual price is. And you can do the same thing that you did for college. You can finance it. You got a credit card. You got access to financing. Invest in yourself and put yourself and your family first, and I will work with you to help you get what you want. So if you got any questions, reach out to me. This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave. Talk to you later.